I'm going to cover all the assembling procedure, doing some painting or airbrushing. Ta-da! Far-Farina from Bandai's 30-Minute Sisters series. Hello guys, how are you? I'm Kawa from Hobbies. Today I'm going to do a build series doing a character figure from Bandai. And I'm going to cover all the assembling procedure, doing some painting or airbrushing. And I'll show you how I do the finalizing for model when I finish all the painting and sort of stuff. So today is going to be the episode 1, which is how I do the test build. Well, the model kit I'm going to working on is ta-da! Far-Farina from Bandai's 30-Minute Sisters series. And I'm going to make her as a Hearns Hobbies mascot. So you might see her in some of the social media posts after I finish that. And because it's going to be a mascot of Hearns Hobbies, so I will need to red paint her armor and maybe her hair color and everything. I'm also going to use some option parts to swap around to change her ratio or sort of things. And this is the option parts I'm going to use. So let's get started. Let's have a very quick look before we start assembling everything. So this is a box art and we can see there is a dash between her name, so that means it's a full armor kit. And this is a side view of the box. Another side showing some examples of swapping the parts around. And this side, another side. And this is the option parts. We might notice the option parts color scheme is very different to the figure itself, but we don't need to worry about it because we will need to repaint everything afterwards. So for today, I'm just going to assembling everything together, see how the parts looks like when they are getting together. And let's open the box. Ta-da! Oh my god, that's actually very cute faces, aren't they? So we have the face parts and the neck joint, and that's the armors. And this kit also comes with a very simplified stand to help you to display the model after you finish it, which is very good. And the green hair, very cute. I like the color. And we have the weapons sort of and the armor on the body. And how cool is that? I think that's a wing unit attached to her back, and that's a shield. They also giving you a swappable front hair parts because it has a very additional hair accessory on the head. And yeah, that's all we have. I think this one is more simple compared to Al-Kakadi, another 30-minute sister from the same series, the red one I'm working on. And yeah, let's have a quick look on the manual. So the biggest difference to assemble the 30-minute sister series and the Gundam should be you will need to work on dividing all the parts from the spur before you're assembling everything up, and just quickly follow the instructions on the manual, like the part list page. And yeah, it gives you very clear direction on the first few pages, so you don't need to worry about if you get lost. And you will see me doing this anyway, so I will show a quick demo on that. You don't need to worry about that either. And yeah, because we're using the body parts from the option parts pack, so when we're assembling this, we don't need to work on the original body from the kit. And yes, let's get started. So the first thing I will do is get all the sprues out of the bag. Just put it into the box we have. And for today, I'm only going to use the hobby knife and side cutter. Also, we will need to use some sanding sticks. We're going to use some sanding sponges to get rid of the leftover of the sprue gates. Okay, let's start on dividing all the parts based on how the instruction on the manual. This is the parts that will be used in the last step, so we're going to put into the bag for the sprue force. And for this part is here, it's supposed to be cut off into 4 different parts, but we can see they all goes into number 2, so I think it's okay if we don't cut them off. So just simply put them into the bag of number 2. And that's the face we're going to use this time. Actually, I don't mind which face I'm using because I'm going to repaint the face anyways. So it goes into number 1. And that's the stand. I think whatever it goes, it's like in number 4. Yeah, I just finished like dividing all the parts into different areas. And let's have a look at what we should do next. And what I'm going to do next is a very basic technique called pre-build or test building in the model making. That is, if you want to do more advanced things on your model, you will need to pre-build all the parts together to see which part is missing something, or you need to do some extra works on some parts. And it is a procedure that shows you how everything looks like when it comes together. And you want to make the pre-build very flexible because you know some of the snap kit, especially from Bandai, sometimes the parts are holding very tight if you're actually building them together. So we're going to do some extra things while we do the pre-build. This is the time we're using the hobby knife. And sometimes we also use the side cutters to cut on the connection holes to make it looser and more easy to plug in or disassemble afterwards. And we also need to use, normally we also need to use some blue tack when you test build on the jet nozzle part on Gundams, and also might use the masking tape to just quickly put all the things on the right spot without touching the connection joints. And yeah, so for today I just want to keep everything simple, so I will just use the side cutter and the hobby knife. So let's start with the first area we're going to build, which is Far-Farina's head. So when we're taking off the parts from the sprue, we mostly, like 99% of the condition, we don't want to directly put the side cutter's blade beside the parts to cut off, because if you do that, you might lose some of the tiny parts on the surface, and it's very hard to fix and very obvious when you're assembling everything up. So what I normally do is I left a bit of the sprue on the So I'm cutting off the parts with some tiny sprue on the parts like this. I will just quickly give a zoom in. So it's gonna be very ideal if you put your blades around here instead of here. So can you see the difference? Yeah. So I'll just quickly cut them off like that. And same as here. And yeah. So generally, if the model kit is just for assembling, I will put more effort into working on the sprue marks. But this time, we're going to spray some colors onto the parts so it will cover everything. So I will just simply cut them off instead of like working on that very, very patiently. And speaking of cutting off the leftovers on the parts, it is a very tiny details and good to know when you cut them off. It's like the direction you put the blades. So for this kind of leftovers sitting on the edge of a very thin surface, which direction you will put your side cutters on? Are you going to cut like this way or that way? I think some of the people might considering cutting from this way because it will minimize the size of the touching area that the side cutters blades goes onto the surface. But when I testing out, I found this will make, if you're cutting from this way, it will make the gate mark more obvious. So generally I cutting from this side. Even it might cut off some of the parts, but I think it worth it. So you just need to be a bit more careful when you're cutting from this way. And same with this one. And I'm going to show you a very quick demo if this is a part that I'm not going to work on the paint afterwards. How do I get rid of the white tiny dots? So I normally use the hobby knife. I use the blade to simply scratch on a point that having the leftovers. And after using the hobby knife, I normally work with starting sanding them from the 400 grids and then 800. And normally I often go up to 1000, but I don't have my 1000 grid sanding sponge today, so I will just leave it at the 800 anyways because I'm going to do something else afterwards, so it doesn't really mind. And I'm going to speed up a little bit for the rest of them. Let's see if we could get the first half of the body done by today. And yeah. And the key point for test build is when you're filling the parts, like when you're snapping them all together, you feel them a bit tight. Stop pushing them together. Instead, you will take one part out and using your hobby knife to scratch a bit off to make it loosen. So I'd either go with the hobby knife or I using the 600 grid to scratch them a little bit. And let's try another time. Yeah, now it feels like easier to attach and detach. But you still got some strings, at the same time, so you don't need to worry about if it falls apart. That's very perfect for test build. I don't know why, but I always forgot to put the face parts before we do the hair. Let's do it now. And for the test build, I don't even need to do some extra work on the spur gate because we want to be fast, as fast as possible for the preview. Yeah, it's very perfect, and we try to pull them off. Yet it doesn't. It's not very tight, and it's perfect holding them together. And then we want to put on the side hairs, which is number 2 and number 5. And from now we already can tell there is some of the details we might need to work on later, which is this spot here, and we can see a lot of gaps between the hairs. We might need to make them like invisible afterwards, and also the hair are not very sharp. We might need to sand them a little bit after, but this is how it looks like for now. And moving on to the chest, like that. And that's the chest. We're going to proceed to the, and then we have A18 and A7 put together, and then have A4 on the top. And there is another reason that why we don't want to work on the gate marks before we do the test build is because sometimes after you pre-build, you might notice some of the gate marks are hidden. Some of the gate marks are hidden by the position, and you don't actually need to put extra times on that. So that means in some of the aspects, you will save a lot of time if you do a pre-build without working on the gate marks. So from the test build, we might find some of the problem that we need to fix afterwards. For example, you can see there is a big gap over here. So we might want to use some cement to glue them together after we come up with the color scheme to repaint. See if we need to glue them together before or after the paint. So I'll just leave it for now. So the general idea of doing the test build is all the connection joints are loosened better than tightened. Because when you are pulling off all the parts afterwards, you might damage everything if you make them too tight. But loosen is easier to fix compared to tighten. And we get our head parts. We will need the neck to connect the body and head. Let's see which neck part I want to use for the, might be this one. We're testing the range of movement after put them together, especially for the ball joint parts. Seems like it's all good. And yes, that's the demo I do for the test build. And for the next episode, I will finish off the test build and we will straightly start on the next step after we finish the test build. I'm Kawa from Hearns Hobbies. If you have any questions or thoughts, feel free to leave in the comment section below. If you like this video, give us a like if you want. And yeah, that's all for today's video. Thanks for watching. I'm Kawa. See you in the next episode. Bye bye!